Three, two, one. Hello, Fabio. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Marty. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure too. So, to get us started, I really wanted us to start with a little bit of your background, when and how you started learning languages, and also you're a teacher. So, maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into that. And of course, your Stolaroid stories, so we will get to that as well. But to begin with, I suppose your first contact with foreign languages, where did that start for you?
Um, I can speak two languages, English and Italian. English is my second language, and I realized I had to learn English when I was 18. I was on a beach in Italy, and I was trying to communicate with two German girls, and I couldn't. I could only say basic things. But we started talking about life and our plans for the future. We kind of got philosophical about life, and I couldn't express myself, and I realized that that was a big limitation, a big limit, and so I decided. I thought, well, I must learn English, otherwise I will never be able to speak with people who don't speak Italian. And that was just like I after that I didn't uh, start learning English. I then moved to London because I was sick of my job. So when I was 24, I moved to London, and I thought, okay, I'm going to move abroad. I'm going to leave Italy, and this will give me also the opportunity to to learn English. And that's when I fell in love with learning English. I fell in love with learning English in London because I noticed that I was improving, and the more I noticed that I was improving, the more I wanted to learn. So yeah, I studied English and French in school, but you know,
That's
how
not
we
always very effective.
yeah, exactly. So that's how I started. And then when I discovered that I could become a teacher, there's, maybe you're familiar with it, the CELTA course. I discovered that there was this teaching training course that even non-native speakers could take. I was like, wow, so English could become my job. I will not do um, like, because I used to do jobs that I hated, working in offices, and I thought this will be a job that will make me feel human. And I love learning English. I will love teaching the language too. And that was even more motivating for me. So that's how I started learning and my journey to teaching as well.
And did you find that you do love teaching English, or has it been very different than what you were expecting?
Um, I could tell you that I've been teaching since 2015 because I took my I got my CELTA in 2015 in New Zealand, and at the beginning I was much more motivated than I am now, because everything was new, of course. I think I've changed, my mindset. I've changed my mind about many things. Lesson planning is one. um, how I approach lessons is another thing that I like. At the beginning I used to plan every single minute of the lesson, and it would take me basically the whole evening. But now I work more with the students, and I'm actually trying to understand this new thing of coaching. So coaching rather than teaching. I'm reading a book which is, oh, it's here. Can I show the book?
course.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive language coaching handbook by Gabriella Kovacs, a language coach, and it explains how what coaching is, why is powerful, why is can empower teachers and learners as well, because she says that learners' expectations have changed. You know, I personally think the language schools um, don't have a long life today, because online learning apps. I mean, there's a lot that students can do on their own without sitting in a classroom for 2 hours twice a week uh, for a language course, and especially doing nothing in between lessons, because language schools are still, teachers give homework, but in between lessons there's no support from the school. So they just, okay, let's have this lesson, let's study a little bit of grammar, a little bit of these things, see you on Thursday, and then that's it. um I think we need to teach how to learn, not teach the language. This is a big mindset shift that I'm going through right now.
And do you
Sorry,
think
long
that this
long
is
answer.
the, but very much appreciated, very detailed. So then do you think that this is the difference between teaching and coaching? That teaching is, like you said, just about the language, but coaching is rather the skill of learning? Or how would you differentiate teaching and coaching?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out what one is, and I mean what they mean. But there
Hmm.
is pure coaching. This is what I'm reading in the book. There's pure coaching where you just trust the learner and you don't give advice. So you don't say, well, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. No, it's more, um, what do you think you should do? And they come up with their own solutions, and then you help them come up with their own solutions to the problems they have. Always looking forward, never in the past. Because if you start looking into the past, then you're not a good language learner, you failed. No, you only look forward. But teaching is more like, this is coaching is here, then there's teaching here, where you just say, okay, this is how we say this is how the preposition goes here. You teach the language, but of course teachers are also coaches and coaches are also teachers, so there's not a clear cut. But there are, I mean, that can they you could view them as two opposite things, I think, because I'm still forming an idea here. Or you could integrate them so they can merge, or nothing. So two options, I think.
Definitely, definitely. Okay. So then with your, let's say, development in like you said, that since you started teaching, your mindset has shifted quite largely, and I would say that this is probably a natural progression, or at least something that I also noticed in myself, that at the beginning, like you said, with the lesson planning and okay, 5 minutes for this and 10 minutes for that and
Mm.
7.5 minutes for this, and it's insane, versus shifting to okay, what do you want to do, right? What can I help you with? What do you
Mm-hmm.
most need from me? Instead of okay, we're gonna, do tenses or whatever. So certainly a big shift into focusing on the student, which I feel like is what teachers think they're doing, but I don't really see that always being the case, versus
Mm.
genuinely, I am here for you. What do you want to do? And I do want to connect that to something that you said, that students' expectations are shifting. And I would really love to connect this to your own experience with learning English. Of course, having done that for quite some time now, would you say that your expectations have shifted over time, not just because you've gotten better, but because of this, let's say, societal potentially shift in how we speak, how we communicate, and also how we learn?
Yes, I would say that at the beginning, to me, English was the language spoken in the UK
Hmm.
because I was learning it in the UK and I wanted to sound like a native. I wanted a British accent because I loved the British accent. Um, I wanted to be perfect. But then I moved to Australia, and when I was in Australia, I wanted an Australian accent. And then I moved to New Zealand, and I wanted a New Zealand accent. So my expectations always changed. But um, now I see it. We know that English is the global language. It's the language that a person from Brazil uses to speak with a person from Japan. It's the lingua franca, and that has also, well, wait, did I answer your question? So my expectations changed. Now I don't, to be honest, now I don't really care anymore about how I
Hmm.
sound. Um, I still don't want to sound Italian at times. Um, but yeah, I think at the beginning it was the language of the native speakers of English. Then the more I learned about English, and also when I became a teacher, I started realizing that, well, you don't have to, if you don't pronounce the th sound like the native speakers pronounce it, well, people will also, most of the time, people will understand you. Uh, so that has got implications on how we teach. There's a very good TED talk about this, called um, "How to Speak Bad English" by a language coach, Heather. I can't remember her name. Heather something, from the Netherlands. She's American, but she lives in the Netherlands, and she's a language coach. And she talks about this, about speaking bad English. It's a language that keeps evolving. Um, so yeah, did I answer your question?
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so. So then do you think that the expectations, and I really like that you mentioned this, that at the very beginning you wanted to be perfect and sound just like a
Mm.
native, and then over time you realized that that's not really what it's all about, I suppose, at the end of the day. And I believe that more and more people are realizing this now, that, okay, I may not have the perfect accent and I may not have perfect grammar and I may not be perfect in every single sense of the word, and that's still okay. Would you say that that has been your biggest mindset shift?
In terms of, I mean, as a learner,
Hmm.
um, that hasn't changed. I mean, I still want to speak without mistakes, but now, and I mean, it's easy for me to say it now because now I can speak English quite well. It's not perfect. I know that it's not perfect. I know that I can still improve it, like I can improve my Italian, because my Italian is
Brilliant.
basic. Not basic. Um, I mean, I use it only in informal context. So I use it with friends, family members, and I don't even write emails in Italian anymore. And the most formal context that I find myself in might be a job interview. I don't do public speaking, so my Italian is really conversational and colloquial.
Hmm.
And so I can improve it and I don't read in Italian. That's another disadvantage. I only read, not only, but most of the things that I read are in English. So I guess I could still improve. But when I teach students, I think it's important to ask them what they want and why, right? So if they want to be perfect, if they want to get to a C2 level, so to a very high level, then and they have a good reason, like I would always ask, why do you want that?
Mm.
Um, and that's their goal. So if they want to sound like a native, I think you can't say no, you don't need to sound like a
Yeah.
native. Why? I want to sound like I wanted to sound like a native. And if a teacher told me that you don't need to sound like a native, don't try, because I mean this is my life. I set my own goals, and if I hire you, it's because I want your help, and you need to help me achieve my goals. So, um, so as I said, it's important to ask them what and why, and then we shouldn't get, as teachers or as coaches, we shouldn't get in the way and help them. Sometimes they don't know what to, they don't know their goals, and this is where coaches can really help. So, why do you want to learn this language? Can you just get by with a B1 level? Maybe that's enough. You don't need to sound, you don't need to take exams, or you don't need to have an advanced level of English. It depends on your situation, right? So, yeah, I would say we should be of service. I don't know if that's English, but we should, yeah. So that's our responsibility.
And what's your strategy perhaps on goal setting? How do you deal with that for yourself? Not even for your students, but you yourself. I want to do this. What's your procedure for goal setting
In language learning or in general, you
in
mean?
general?
Okay, I set myself clear goals, but for example, I after Celta, I I took the Delta, okay, the Delta course, the diploma in teaching English, and I just knew that I wanted to pass it. And when I set myself a goal, then I do anything I can to reach that goal. And I hate not finishing things. So I would now I have I'm also doing a master's degree now, and I have the last module. I'm doing the it's a master's degree in language education. I've done the first three modules. I now have to do the fourth module, which is the dissertation, and it's starting in September. And to be honest, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't know what to focus on. I don't know what the dissertation should focus on. But I would hate not finishing this master's degree. So to me, there's no way I'm not going to do this. I don't know if that's a healthy relationship with goals, because we could also, I mean, we should also let go of goals, you know. Um, but I'm trying to adopt this mindset of letting go. For example, when I read a book before, I used to think that if I started a book, I had to finish the book, even though it was the worst book in the world. And I did that many times. And I can't remember a single thing about the books that I read, of those books that I didn't like. Now I was reading this book,
Okay.
okay, Michelle Obama, Becoming. And I got to page 35, and nothing happened that excited me. And I thought, okay, now I can keep going with this, because I have to finish it, like I did with many other books before. or I can just close the book and let go of this idea that I have to finish every book I start. And that's what I did. It's still here. I think I'm going to sell this book, or I'm going to give it away. And I think that's a much better, like, it's liberating, you know. You don't have to finish all the goals that you don't have to accomplish all the goals that you've set yourself. But of course, um, you need to know. Also, you need to have goals. That's essential. Sorry, another long answer, but you're asking very
It
good
good,
questions,
yeah.
really good questions.
I'm happy to hear that. And it's a very interesting balance that you're talking about here because I feel like it's very easy to get stuck in that rigor of, okay, I have a goal and no matter what happens, if the world ends, I'm going to finish that goal.
Mm,
Where I heard a quote maybe 2 or 3 days ago that I believe a lot of people could benefit from, that not everything is worth doing. And it
mm,
sounds so simple, but then when you really, sit and think about it, that, yeah, right. I mean, why am I doing this?
mm,
And it seems like such an existential question, but like you said, okay, I started it. I'm not really having fun. And that's, I
mm,
suppose, why you started it, to learn something, to enjoy it, to gain a new perspective. And if it's not doing that for you, then what's the point at the end of the day? So, like you said, potentially a healthier relationship too, to have that balance of, okay, this is important, this is something that I probably want to or need to finish,
mm-hmm.
versus this, maybe not so much. Certainly.
Exactly. Um, yeah, you mentioned having fun. Sometimes you're not having fun, but you know that what you're doing is worth doing.
Yes.
So you think long term. You know, like uh, going to the gym. Maybe you don't have fun going to the gym, but if you keep in mind that if you go to the gym every week, then you will be healthier and you will have a better body if that's what you want. Uh, then doesn't matter if you're not having fun. You're working towards your future self. So you're helping your future self, and your future self will have fun, but your present self will not. So,
Have you gone through
um,
something like that in your English learning journey, that maybe in the moment maybe you really hated learning vocabulary or
mm,
grammar or something like that, but now you're really happy that you did?
never. Not a single day. I actually wrote a blog on this, a blog post. Um, I titled it "No, you don't have to work hard to learn a language," meaning that it's about goals as well. But to me, learning English was like playing games. Was like playing football with my friends. It was pleasurable. I couldn't wait to do it. Um, I really had fun. I was honestly, I was having fun doing the grammar exercises, doing watching movies with subtitles, without subtitles, taking lessons, taking exams. And to me, that was because I knew where I was going. I knew that I wanted to become a teacher. I knew that I could make international friends because of English. So I never felt like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated. I'm not fluent, or I don't understand this movie, or oh my, I need to learn vocabulary today. Not a single minute. And that's an advantage, you know, when you have that motivation, then you can achieve anything. Not all language learners have this motivation. Probably they need help to find it. And yeah, so mm, that's one and another one of our responsibilities, probably. Because how do you motivate people to do what they don't want to do? that's
Very good
that's hard.
question.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask something along those lines, and you somewhat beat me to it because you said that you always had that motivation, that bigger picture for yourself. And I'm
Mm,
thinking about those people that are in the boat of I'm frustrated, I'm not making progress, I'm not
mm,
where I want to be. And to anybody listening to this, what would you say is the quote unquote solution to that? I mean, finding motivation, but like you said, how do you do
mm.
that?
um I think setting yourself a very clear goal again, um, can really help you. So if you feel frustrated or if you don't want to learn, if you don't feel like learning, well, probably you shouldn't do it. If you don't want to learn English, or if learning English doesn't feel the right thing to do, or learn any language, not just English, or doing anything in life, and you're not forced to do it, so your survival doesn't depend on learning a language, well, then just let it go and do something else and learn another skill. You don't have to speak more than one language in your life. um, but if you want to do it and you don't like it, then I think you would need to find a very clear reason why you're doing it. You're not doing it um, um, because you will find a better job. I think you should be more specific, more specific. So you will find a better job. Okay, how will that change you? How will that improve your life? So okay, better job means I will have more free time if it's a very good job, more money, so I can pay for my kids' school, for my kids' education, and that's why I'm learning English today. It's not the best thing that I'm going to do in my life, but it it's what it's what will change my life and the life of my kids, for example. So picturing yourself, this it's actually a common um, goal setting technique, visualizing yourself in the future. So that could really help. i was I didn't really have to do it. I mean, I didn't have to force myself to do it because I knew that where I was going. And actually, I do you know Arnold Schwarzenegger? Yeah, he talks about this, and he says he talked about this in a speech that he gave, a motivational speech, and he said that people back in the days, they asked him, why are you always working so hard in the gym, but you're not, like, the other people are looking miserable, they're doing the same thing that you're doing, but you always have a smile on your face. And he always said, because I had a clear goal, I wanted to become Mr. Olympia, so everything I was doing was because was was a step forward to reaching my goal. Well, that's so seeing yourself, your future self there, is what can really give you a kick in the butt and do and make things happen.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
not
very
saying
right.
anything new, by the way. Yeah, so I think these are things that we know, but we need to get reminded of. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. It's one of those things that you need to see every week or every month. Okay,
Mm.
yes, that
Mm.
for sure, for sure. And I have the same relationship with the why question, and I believe that. I mean, again, nothing revolutionary, but I feel like
Mm.
so many people forget about it. And like you said, it does come back to your visualization of yourself and your goals for your future. But essentially, that deeper why, maybe 4 or 5 levels, and you really get to where you want to go. So, like you said, okay, I want to study English. Why? So I can get a better
Mm.
job. Exactly what you said. Okay, why? Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
I have more time. I have, okay, more money. Okay, why do you want to have more time? So I can enjoy my kids' youth, or I can go on holiday. Okay, why do you want to do that? And I find that after those 4 or 5 levels of whys, we go back to the pyramid of Maslow, and it all comes
Mm-hmm.
back to I want to be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all it comes down to. And if it doesn't, then like you said, perhaps you need to reconsider why you're doing it in the first place.
Mm.
So that deeper questioning of why you're learning in the first place can really give you that motivation of, okay, this is why I started, this is why I should continue.
Exactly. I agree.
And do you think that this, what you're talking about with the motivational speech and perhaps all of the books that you've been reading, we briefly talked about that last time, but can you tell me a little bit more about the books that you read? Do you have a purpose with, okay, I'm trying to better myself, or is there something specific that you're trying to learn, or what's your purpose with your
Um,
books?
I choose the books I want to read based on what I want to learn in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, for example, I'm reading this book now because the Comprehensive Language Coaching Handbook, because I wanted to learn more about coaching. So I see what
Seems
books.
logical.
Yeah, that's the most logical thing to do. So this is how I choose my books. If I have a reading list, but I don't know what book I'm going to read after this one. It will it I my decisions are made in the moment. But I can tell you that, okay, I read nonfiction 95%. Actually, now it's 98%, if not 100, because I haven't read a fiction book in years. Um, I have a favorite writer who's Derek Sivers. Don't know if you've ever heard of him. Um, who's written a couple of books, and he inspired me to write my own book about language learning, which is called Any Language You Want. And basically, I say everything I did to master my second language. So in every chapter, I tell a short story, and every chapter ends with the same sentence, which is, "This is how to learn a language." But each chapter contradicts the next. And it's something that I had a lot of fun writing. It's going to be out in June, so next in June
Okay.
2023.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big nonfiction fan, so um, I like true stories. This is why I wrote this book, by telling my own true stories. And I just read to learn. I don't read for. I'm not saying that it's not useful, not saying that, but I don't read for pleasure. Like, I don't read. I mean, I get pleasure by reading nonfiction, but I don't read because I want to enjoy a beautiful story with the characters. I'm missing out on a lot of things, I know, but at this stage in my life, this is what I want to read. And it's, again, I could read nonfiction, but why? So I let go of that, and I read what I enjoy. You should do everything that makes you happy. Reading nonfiction makes me happy.
That's a very good tagline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I want to dig a little bit deeper into what you said, and something that we've also briefly discussed, what you mentioned, what got you from your, let's say, advanced level in English to that master level, and getting to that fluency that so many people seek in English. Would
Mm.
you say that, is there anything that it boils down to, that okay, it was your persistence potentially, or maybe something specifically that you did over and over again that got you to that mastery? Or would you say that it was a lot of different things over a long period of time that one day you just woke up and, oh, now I'm
Mm.
fluent?
Um, I can tell you that in 2018, I was already a teacher, Delta qualified, so with experience and qualifications, but I was still afraid of sending vocal messages on WhatsApp to
Mm.
my colleagues. And now I have a podcast. So,
Yeah, that's a big jump.
yeah. um it all comes down, it's the whole the old boring advice. It all comes down to doing things even though they might scare you, and do them repeatedly, failing multiple times, and and just keep doing them. Practice, yeah, in one word, it's practice. Because if you're scared and you don't do it, then you will never do it. So I would say that I didn't wake up one day and I was fluent. It was, I started learning English, learning seriously, in 2011. So 12 years of living abroad. I was lucky because I was in English speaking countries, but that's another that's another story. I mean, you don't have to be there to learn, especially now with all the technology that we've got that I didn't have in 2011. Um, and practicing motivation, reading a lot, speaking a lot, writing. I was writing essays, um, without getting feedback from anyone. I was just writing essays and then check if I had written something good. Um, the three P's, I always say, the three essential P's of learning: patience, perseverance, and passion, which are three P's that one of my teachers, drum teachers, because I was a drummer back 15 years ago. And one day he said, to become a great drummer, you need the three P's: passion, perseverance, and patience. And I thought, wow, I like that. And that's, you know, stuck with me. And today, when students ask me, well, what should I do? Well, be persistent, or so persevere, don't give up, be passionate about what you're doing, and practice. No,
Be patient.
passion, pride. I don't
Patience.
remember the three P's.
Patience.
Uh, patience. Yes. So, what was your question?
Well, I suppose we answered that as we went along, so
Okay.
wonderful, wonderful, perfect. I really liked your message that it's doing things that scare you, and I realize that most people in the world do not like to hear that. But
Mm,
it really is that catch-all that if you never get out of your comfort zone and if you never move out of what you already can do, then how can you ever expect to learn anything? So,
exactly.
uncomfortable but true.
Yeah, and that's how you can also improve at higher levels. Because if you're an advanced learner of English, or if you're already good at something, how can you keep improving? Well,
Hmm.
keep challenging yourself, doing things that would scare you, or things that you would make you feel, oh my god, no, 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 I can't do this. So, like, if you're an advanced, uh, mm, if you're a football player, and you're already advanced. No, I don't have the example. I don't have the example.
That was a good start.
Yeah, it was a good start. If you're advanced, well, a football player should maybe aim at playing in a better team. I don't know if you play for a local team, go and try, do your best to play in a more renowned team. That's how you would improve. Um, Always challenging yourself, right? And this is why I organize book clubs in in what I do, like in my little online business teaching world that I have. Because a real book written, not a graded reader, but a real book, a non-fiction book, could help you advance your English even more if you're advanced. And when you're an advanced learner, what are you going to do? Are you going to use course books again, or you're going to study grammar at an advanced level? So you should open a YouTube channel, I would say, open a podcast.
Start a
This is why,
podcast, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wrote a couple of blog posts about this. Like, if you're an advanced learner, start podcasting. It would increase your fluency. You would speak into a microphone for as long as you want. For You can invite guests, native speakers, non-native speakers, friends, and you don't need to leave your room. You don't need to go to English-speaking countries. It's a wonderful opportunity. You can do it today with nothing. Like, it could even be free. That would
Really.
scare. That was like in 2018. That would have scared me for sure. I wasn't able to. Not wasn't able, but I didn't want to send vocal messages to my colleagues because I need to check if I made some mistakes, and then because that's the other thing when you become a teacher. I started worrying even more about my mistakes. Like, not even more. I started worrying about my mistakes for the first time because now I'm a
You become
teacher.
a role
People expect
model,
my
yeah.
English to be perfect. Ah,
And honestly, podcasting, even for native English speakers, I would guess would scare a lot of people in general that, oh, I'm shy and what are people gonna think of me and are they gonna like me or not like me? So
mm,
native, non-native, something that a lot of people could probably benefit from, certainly. And to give
yeah.
an example of something that you were talking about, really lovely example that I really like thinking of, and I've been thinking about it very often recently, of a student of mine, and he was at a very advanced level, and we were working on some advanced text and some news and those types of things. And he went on to, and he's still in the development stages of this, but he went on to create his own documentary film, which was
Mm,
incredible for me because,
wow.
like you said, sometimes you're scared to even talk to somebody on the phone,
Mm,
let alone create a whole documentary, right? Where you're speaking to the camera and the whole world is going to see. So, like you said, podcasting, YouTube channel, something like that is definitely something that can make you not super comfortable, but that's the way that you can definitely elevate your level to new heights, certainly.
yeah, because you can do so many things at an advanced level already, and you can create content, and it's an extra challenge. It's an extra challenge instead of taking exams. Because I used to take exams to challenge myself.
Mhm.
Uh, the IELTS, the C2 proficiency, the first certificate, because I wanted another challenge. I wanted to see, okay, now I got this. Now I first did the first certificate in English, and then I thought, okay, IELTS. I know IELTS is hard. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was hard. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take IELTS. But instead of that, I could have done, I could have opened a YouTube channel and worked on my English in another way, in a much more creative way, because I didn't need IELTS. I wasn't, IELTS. You need IELTS if you have to go to study in the UK
Right.
or in Australia
Australia, yeah.
for visa purposes.
Right.
um, I could have had much more fun instead of writing academic essays and describing graphs. But that's what I did, and it for sure it helped me a lot in terms of motivation and language skills as well, because I had to prepare for the exam.
Certainly. And there's one more thing that I want to come back to, something that we somewhat started with, and then I would like to ask you about your podcast and your book and everything else. But I do have one more question, and something that you mentioned that really interested me. You mentioned that you don't really have a very advanced level in your Italian, which I find is probably the case for most native speakers, that you just talk to your friends and family and that's mostly
Mm.
about it. And you said that you mostly read books in English, and I suppose your teaching is for English as well. So have you noticed a disconnect in your personality and how you see yourself in, oh, I am Italian? Have you noticed a difference in your personality and how you perceive yourself as a result of that kind of disconnection from Italian over time?
Um, yes. When I was living in countries in Australia and New Zealand, um, I didn't want to hang out with Italians when I was there, and I kind of felt like I was now in New Zealand. I was in Australia and New Zealand. I don't want to hang out with people from who have the same cultural background that I have. And it was a kind of what's the word? Um, Wait a second. I repel. Is that the word?
Yeah. Repel or
No,
repent?
repent. Yeah, one of the two. Um, because I was an international citizen. I was the citizen of the world, but that was so arrogant of me. And when I was in New Zealand, I have this little story. Um, a friend of mine who was Italian was there with me, and he asked me, "Well, you want to go play football? There's a local tournament here in Auckland, New Zealand. We play every Wednesday. We're all Italians." And I said, "No, I don't want to hang out with Italians. I will hang out with Italians if I go back to Italy one day, uh, but not here." And but then he asked me more than once, and I said, "Okay, let's go." And I went once, and then I went another time, and I discovered that I love being Italian. I am Italian, so this is who I am, right? I can be Italian, and I can be the citizen of the world, whatever that means, which I actually now dislike this idea of I'm a citizen of the world. Don't even know what it means. Um, but yeah, it was funny because I had so much fun there, and I thought finally I get to play football. I get to enjoy pizza in a very good pizzeria that I didn't know about with an Italian man from Naples who made great pizza there in Auckland. And I thought, well, I can't deny who I am. So yeah, there was a kind of there were moments when I thought I don't want to be the Italian. I don't want, not that I don't want to be Italian, but I'm not like the rest of the Italians who live in Italy.
Right.
I'm different, I left Italy. But that's just arrogance. It's just arrogance. And I'm glad I've changed my mind about that.
So do you now identify as Italian with some kind of, let's say, international backgrounds or just
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Italian?
I've traveled most of my friends, more than most of my friends, and But that doesn't, well, does that make you a better person? No, it gives you more experience, but I don't want, when I first came back to Italy, I felt like, a bit superior. I've been around the
Mm,
world.
right.
You've been living your life here in this little town. You haven't seen anything. But there is value in that. There is value in living also, in never leaving your hometown. There's no one right way to live. There's no one right way to learn a language. And so I think, who are you to tell me, you've traveled, okay, so what? Um, are you better than me because I've got kids? Well, one of my friends could say, I've got kids. You don't have kids. Do you know what it takes to raise a kid? You don't have that experience. Yes, you've been to Australia, New Zealand, you traveled around Southeast Asia for 6 months. I don't have that experience. You've never raised a kid. Um, we're going off a tangent here because we're not talking about language learning, but
But you're very
um,
right. It's a very good point,
yeah.
and it's something like you said that it's just inside your head that oh look, I've been here,
Hmm.
okay, and I've been somewhere else.
Yeah, and
What's
nobody really
next?
cares. Like, because when I first came back, I thought my friends now are going to see me like this, this well-traveled man who full of stories and adventures. No one really cared. Like after a couple of days,
Oh.
yes, of course, yeah. Well, like, because no one really cares about um your success, really. they it would be much more interesting if you say, if you when you share your failures, your stories about when you failed, then I've been around the world and, well, good for you. um it's not that won't change my way of thinking. But if you tell me a story about when you failed, well, that would make me interested. I don't know, what do you think?
There is more value to be learned, I feel, from those stories where you failed because, well,
Mm,
not to generalize, of course, because I mean, if you do everything right, then of course I can give you some advice on what went right. But then on the
mm,
flip side of that, if I went somewhere and I made the greatest mistake anybody has ever made, then I can certainly tell you about that, and you hopefully won't make
mm,
the same mistake. And I feel like this is very valuable in language learning as well, because, like you said, I
mm,
mean, we learn through failures. We don't speak perfectly from day one.
mm,
So, from that perspective, okay, I tried to memorize 100 words and that didn't work. Okay, that's kind of a failure. Okay,
mm.
I'm learning from that. I'm developing from that. Let's try something else. Is this going to work? Maybe, maybe not. If it doesn't, then I can learn from that. So I would say that they're both valuable because you can learn from your successes, of course, as well as from your failures. I feel like it's easier for people to accept other people's failures, but I think that's also kind of a selfish thing in us that, oh, you did something
Mm,
better than me, so I'm kind of resentful of that. Whereas if somebody else fails, then it's this kind of warmth on our heart that, oh, okay, other people are failing too, it's not just me. So I feel like there's this bit of
mm,
a
mm.
psychological background to it as well. Both are valuable.
Yeah, it's better. It's a better way to connect when you share um, your failures. No one is really interested, and it's like when you go. I've read this in a book um, called "The Story Worthy." That when you go on holiday and you come back, no one is really interested in knowing where you went, the food, all the great things that you did on holiday. People listen to you because they're nice, but deep down, they don't really care about all the amazing places that you visited. It would be much more interesting if you said, if you told a story about something that the trip, how the trip changed you. So you were thinking about one thing, then you went on a trip and you came back as a different person with different views of the world, of the different views about yourself. But just saying, I went to Spain and it was great. It was amazing experience. Look at all these pictures. My mom always shows me all the pictures. I'm like, nice, you know, very nice. Uh, they are on Google as well. I can I can view them on Google. I don't need to
Yeah.
spend 1 hour here seeing all these pictures. But of course, I'm your son. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
you know. So
You're gonna sit there and watch.
yeah,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course. Of course. There's a great quote I think that can sum this up quite nicely that and I'm probably going to misquote, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in essence, when you're 10, you don't know that other people are thinking about you. When you're 25, you think everybody's thinking about you. And when you're 85, you realize that nobody ever thought of you in the first place.
Mm, nice. Yeah. Well, it sums it up quite nicely.
I would hope so. So, moving on, or I suppose coming back to something that we said at the very, very beginning and something that we've mentioned again here before, your podcast, Stolaroid Stories, talking about your stories, but of course, talking about other people's stories as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I started this podcast in 2021 because I wanted to tell my own stories about photos, my own photos. So I would um, tell a short story about one of my photos, and then I realized that. So then I had my first guest, who was a teacher from Brazil, an English teacher from Brazil, school owner actually, a school owner from Brazil, and that was my first guest. Then I had another one. Then a teacher invited me on his podcast, and I entered this world of podcasting, of podcasters. And then I started inviting guests and asking them to tell their own stories based on pictures. And I was doing this to provide, a little show where for learners of English. So I would also teach something at the end of the podcast. I would say, listen to what the guest said here. What do you think it means? Then I decided to remove that part, and now I just interview. It's not very specific. Like I would define it as a podcast for learners of English who are also interested in self development and true stories. So it's a completely non-fiction podcast, of course. The stories are true, and I try to make a connection like you're doing here. I'm trying, when I interview a guest, I try to make a connection between their story and language learning. I had a great guest, a US Army veteran. This was a guy who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan in the U.S. Army, in the U.S. military, and I asked him, "What's the best way to, what would you say to people who are not confident when learning a language?" And I like making these connections between the people's stories and language learning, because I see language learning as a self-development activity that encapsulates life in a way, because you need to have goals, you need to take risks, you need to be um, willing to fail, you need to learn, you need to see what works and what doesn't, you need to experiment. And it's like life, you do all these things in life too. So I like this analogy between language learning and living your life. Hmm? What do you think?
That makes a lot of sense, and you're very right that it's a bit of a minuscule version of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
Mm,
Because even what you said before, when we were just starting and you were telling us a little bit more about your background, that you had this job that you hated and you needed to
mm,
change something, and we could very easily apply that to language learning, right? So, for example, I'm studying grammar in this way that I really hate. So instead of trying to continue on with it, let's change it. Let's go somewhere else. Let's try something new. Certainly, that's a very good analogy.
yeah. Um, so, oh yeah, the podcast. That's what I do now,
Mm-hmm.
basically. I interview people and I started recording reflections. So I have an idea in mind. Like yesterday, I had this idea. It's actually what we've talked about today, um, of knowing what you're learning. So I just press record and it's what's the word? You see, I forget words. Um, a ramble. Is it a ramble?
Sure, sure.
Mm. So I go on speaking and speaking for 10, 15 minutes about why it's important to know your goal. And I tell my stories. And it takes me very, like, if you're a content creator, if you're a podcaster, I think it's a very good, an effective way to put out content. You just record, you don't edit, that's it, released. But of course, if you have an interview, you have to edit. Or sometimes I script my stories. I'm not doing that very often now. I script the entire story and I tell it in a very, like, all my stories start with um I'm sitting. I told them the first story, the first lesson that I taught in English, very first day after Celta. I think you will like that one. Um, and it starts with I'm lying in bed and the phone rings and it's the director of studies and he says that he needs a teacher, and then I go on with the story. It's a way of it's creating creative writing for me because I script the whole thing, but most of the time I just press record and speak.
Which makes it very genuine, I would assume, that it's
Mm.
just whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't need. I can't spend 3 hours on a 10-minute podcast episode.
For sure.
You can't do it for long.
And is
Not
that your
sustainable.
strategy for your blog as well that you've mentioned before, or do you have a different approach to your blog?
Well, writing is different, and it takes me more time to write. Um, but I usually put out at least one blog a week. I'm on Medium. I don't know if you know Medium.
I don't
Um,
think so,
it's
but
a
you can
it's a
send me
free
the link
blogging.
and I'll
Yeah,
add it to
it's a
the
free
description.
blogging platform. I post there as well. But yeah, usually 1, 2 articles a week. So I find that sustainable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So your
I was actually,
podcast, your
yeah.
blog, is there anywhere else that people can find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to listen to what you have to say?
I would say go to my website. It's all
Mm-hmm.
there. My social media icons are at the bottom of the website. But yeah, my website is the best place to find me.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to add, share, any final piece of wisdom?
Um, I really enjoyed this conversation.
I'm glad to
I
hear
think
that.
you asked really, really good questions. I think I have to learn from you because the questions that I ask my guests are not that insightful. Have you got any background in journalism or?
I do not,
Anything?
just
No?
reading and personal interest that these kinds of things, that psychology side of it really drives
Nice.
me, so I like to dig into that.
Nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed the pace of the conversation. And no, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you too, Fabio. It was a pleasure, and I will talk to you again soon. Hey, I'm glad to see you here. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this conversation, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Do zobaczenia.